Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at something that you encounter every day but probably don't give much thought to,
Oh, yeah.
and that's household mold.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at how it can impact your health based on a real-life case.
Right.
And it has some pretty alarming implications, I think, for anyone who's living in a space that's, less than pristine.
Sure.
This story has it all. Really, it's got a man's decade-long struggle with this, a life-threatening infection, and a very frustrating battle with the authorities.
Wow.
So get ready for a deep dive that I think is really going to be fascinating. And to help us connect the dots and reveal just how significant this case really is, we have our expert here.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, so let's jump right in and unpack the story of Matthew Langsworth.
Okay.
Matthew is from Leamington Spa, and he's been living with persistent mold in his flat
Oh, wow.
for over a decade.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, because of that, he's developed a very serious condition called invasive aspergillosis.
Right.
I know that's a mouthful, but
Yeah.
it's basically a lung infection
Uh-huh.
that is caused by inhaling certain types of mold spores, and it can be incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, that's right. And in Matthew's case, it's actually led to a collapsed lung and sepsis,
Oh.
which is a life-threatening complication of the infection. And what's especially concerning is that the infection has spread to his gut.
Oh, gosh.
And this really underscores that there's potential for some long-term health impacts when someone's exposed to mold for that long.
It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Matthew describes his experience as hell on earth.
Really?
He says he can barely walk to the shop without getting winded.
Wow.
He's also dealing with constant intestinal problems and skin conditions.
Oh, my goodness.
And get this, he's been reporting this to his landlord for 10 years.
10 years.
A decade.
That is a long time to live with something so detrimental to your health.
It is unbelievable.
And it really highlights the importance of early detection and effective communication between tenants and their landlords. Ideally, mold should be addressed as soon as it's discovered to prevent things from escalating to this level of severity.
Right, so where does the landlord fit into all this?
Yeah.
Stonewater is the landlord,
Okay.
and they claim to have addressed the issue. They say that they replaced the bathroom and the kitchen after a leak in 2023.
Okay.
They installed new flooring and even conducted a recent damp and mold survey.
However, if we consider Matthew's ongoing health problems, there's clearly a disconnect here.
Yeah.
Despite the landlord's claims, the mold is still impacting his health. And this raises some serious questions about, who's actually responsible for making sure there's a safe and healthy environment for tenants.
Yeah.
And also, what recourse do tenants have, when those obligations aren't being met?
Right. And it's a real catch-22 for Matthew.
Yeah.
Because the council has deemed his flat fit for living.
Oh, wow.
So he has the impossible choice of staying and continuing to risk his health or leaving and becoming intentionally homeless.
That's a tough spot to be in.
So what are your thoughts on that, knowing that, there are regulations in place?
Well, the situation really exposes just how complex these legal and ethical considerations are surrounding housing.
Yeah.
While regulations do exist, enforcement can be inconsistent,
Yeah.
which unfortunately leads to situations where tenants are left in these really precarious positions.
Right.
Matthew's case is a good illustration of why there needs to be more clarity and stronger advocacy to really protect tenants' rights and ensure their well-being.
Matthew's story sadly isn't unique.
Right.
It echoes another tragic case, that of Awaab Ishak, a 2-year-old boy who died
Oh, my gosh.
from prolonged mold exposure in his home in Rochdale.
Wow.
His family repeatedly reported the mold to their housing association,
Okay.
and they shockingly advised them to just paint over it.
What?
Awaab tragically developed a severe respiratory illness and passed away.
So both Matthew and Awaab's stories really highlight the urgent need for awareness and action when it comes to dealing with household mold. These are stark reminders that it's not just an inconvenience. We're talking about life-altering consequences here.
Right.
Early detection is crucial.
Yeah.
And if we think about, maybe your own living space,
Yeah.
have you noticed any signs of mold?
Right.
Like maybe a musty odor or any discoloration on your walls or ceilings?
Yeah.
These could indicate a problem that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking to hear these stories, and it really makes you think about, the potential dangers lurking in your own home.
Yeah, for sure.
It seems like something that could be prevented with a little more awareness.
Yeah.
What are some things that people should be looking out for?
Well, early detection is key. And that starts with, recognizing those common signs of mold growth.
Okay.
So have you ever noticed like a musty smell in your home, particularly in areas like bathrooms, kitchens, or basements?
Well,
That could be like an early indicator that you might have a mold problem. Also, you want to keep an eye out for any discoloration on your wall ceilings or even your furniture.
why?
Mold can appear as black, green, brown, or even white patches.
So that old saying, if you can smell it, it's already a problem, really applies here.
Exactly. And don't just rely on your sense of smell. Use your eyes and even your sense of touch.
Okay.
Mold often feels slimy or fuzzy to the touch.
Yeah.
So if you notice any of these signs, it's really important to investigate further and try to address the issue as soon as possible.
Okay, so let's say you've discovered mold in your home.
Right.
What should you do? Is it something you can tackle yourself, or should you call in the professionals?
So while there are some DIY mold removal methods out there for like small isolated patches, it's important to understand, the underlying cause of the problem.
Right.
If you're dealing with a recurring mold issue, it's essential to try and identify and fix the source of the moisture, whether it's a leaky pipe or maybe you have poor ventilation or condensation buildup.
So it's not just about like cleaning up the mold that's there, it's about preventing it from coming back.
Exactly. Think of it like this. If you have a leaky faucet, simply wiping up the spilled water won't really solve the problem.
Yeah.
You need to fix the faucet itself.
Right.
And similarly with mold, you need to address that root cause of the moisture to prevent it from returning.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But what about those bigger mold problems? When is it time to call in the experts?
Yeah, if you're dealing with a large or persistent mold infestation, especially if it covers more than 10 square feet,
Okay.
it's always best to consult with a professional mold remediator.
Okay.
They have the expertise and the specialized equipment to safely and effectively remove that mold and prevent it from coming back.
What I'm hearing is that, trying to tackle a major mold problem yourself could actually backfire.
Yeah, and, safety should always be your top priority.
Mm-hmm.
Mold remediation can involve exposure to harmful spores.
Right.
So professionals use protective gear like respirators and gloves.
Mm-hmm.
They also have specific procedures in place to contain the mold and prevent it from spreading during the removal process.
So if you have any underlying health conditions, it's probably best to consult with your doctor before attempting to remove any mold yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Individuals with respiratory problems, allergies, or compromised immune systems are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of mold exposure.
Okay.
So yeah, it's best to err on the side of caution and seek professional help in those cases.
So we've talked a lot about what you can do, to address mold in your own home. But what about the responsibility of landlords and housing authorities?
Yeah.
What are their legal obligations when it comes to mold?
So in the UK, landlords have a legal obligation to provide safe and habitable housing for their tenants.
Okay.
And this includes addressing issues like dampness and mold that can impact their health and well-being.
Right.
They're required to take reasonable steps to identify and remedy any mold problems in their properties.
But as we saw in Matthew's case, there's often a gap between, these legal obligations and what actually happens.
Yeah.
It seems like tenants often face an uphill battle trying to get their landlords to actually take action.
You're right. Enforcement can be inconsistent, and tenants sometimes struggle to navigate the system and assert their rights.
Yeah.
However, it's important to remember that you're not alone.
Right.
Organizations like Shelter provide valuable resources and support for tenants who are facing housing issues, including problems with damp and mold.
That's really good to know.
Wow.
So while the responsibility ultimately lies with the landlord, tenants also have a role to play in protecting themselves.
Exactly. Being informed about your rights and taking those proactive steps to identify and report any mold issues can make a significant difference.
Yeah.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about mold, the better equipped you'll be to advocate for your own well-being and ensure a safe and healthy living environment.
It's amazing how something so seemingly insignificant, can have such a profound impact on our health and our lives.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
From the science behind mold to the legal complexities surrounding it.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It is, and it's clear that mold is an issue that deserves a lot more attention and awareness.
Absolutely.
I think by talking about it, sharing information, we can empower people to take action and protect themselves and their loved ones.
For sure.
So let's move on to the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Where we'll kind of recap the key takeaways and leave you with some final thoughts and resources.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's recap kind of what we've learned in this deep dive into household mold. It's been pretty eye-opening, to say the least.
Yeah, it really has.
What are some of the key takeaways that you want our listeners to walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, Mold is a serious health hazard. And recognizing those early signs is crucial. We talked about those musty odors, discoloration, and even, physical symptoms like coughing or wheezing. Those are all red flags that shouldn't be ignored.
Right, and we can't forget about the importance of prevention. Addressing those underlying moisture problems in your home, like leaky pipes or poor ventilation, is key to really stopping mold before it even starts.
Absolutely. It's so much easier to prevent the problem than to have to deal with the consequences later on.
Right, and if you do find mold, don't panic, but definitely don't ignore it either.
Yeah.
Take steps to kind of remediate the problem safely and effectively, whether that's tackling a small patch yourself or calling in those professionals for a larger infestation.
Right.
Remember, protecting your health should be your top priority.
For sure.
And, it's important to remember that as a tenant, you have rights. If your landlord is failing to address a mold problem, don't hesitate to seek help and advocate for yourself.
Yes.
There are resources available, like we talked about shelter, that can provide support and guidance in those situations.
Exactly. These situations can be really challenging. But, knowledge is power. The more you understand about mold, the better equipped you'll be to protect yourself and your family.
That is so well said. This deep dive has been fascinating and a little bit unsettling. I think it's safe to say that we all learned a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Mold is definitely a serious issue that deserves way more attention and action.
I agree. I think, by raising awareness, sharing knowledge, and demanding better, we can really work towards a future where everyone has a safe and healthy place to call home.
I love that.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Think about your own home for a moment. Have you ever noticed any of those, telltale signs of mold, maybe a lingering musty smell or a suspicious-looking stain on the ceiling? Take a closer look tonight. And, if you have any concerns, don't hesitate to take action.
Yeah.
Remember, a little bit of awareness can go a long way in protecting your health and well-being.
That's great advice. And remember, if you're ever unsure about something, there are resources available to help. Don't be afraid to ask questions, seek guidance, and most importantly, trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't.
So true. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of household mold. It has been quite a journey. We hope you've come away with a better understanding of this often overlooked health hazard. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay mold-free.